Just the way you are.
Yeah, because you guys can't wear larges.
Hey!
What?
Heidi's gonna win her pants. She's so excited.
Go back down there. Get down there.
Okay.
Okay, for the first one here,
Introduce yourself.
It's a little thing. I'm Dave.
Dave who?
Michelle. That's
Dave
not
who?
ours.
Yeah, it's
How do you spell that?
What we're gonna do is just, get everybody acquainted, some things like that. Bill's gonna tape it all for us. But so to start with, we're gonna pass around this roll of toilet paper and pull off as much as you want or as little as you want. It's up to you. Okay? And that's the first thing we need to do. Is everybody just grab some toilet paper.
Oh no. Take off what you use, Norma.
What's sitting on it?
I'm gonna take the whole roll.
Oh, go get some.
Is this a psychological test?
No.
No, go down by Mom, Ashley.
We'll analyze how much you take.
Down.
Okay, we're supposed to have taken that too.
Okay.
Alright.
You need some
Or the sleeve.
Yeah, don't wad it up or anything. We're gonna need it, so keep it fairly neat.
Stephen Walter. Stephen Walter.
They have to match it up and some
Sure.
Look at my mom's.
How do you get from wanting a toilet paper?
Good, Joanna.
That's where Walter and Steve went to get them. Lisa.
Give me where to go.
My nose is ready.
Shush up the door.
Please, get away.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's my
You're not supposed to use it, but that's all.
Couldn't wait.
You're going to be on
I can show you where I
Ready all the way?
Ashley, get down. Don't make her hold you. Get down. Get down. There's about a 15 laps that you can sit on. Pick a lap.
Okay. Tell me when.
Okay.
No? You have any help?
Take some.
Sorry.
Short must be good. Look how short
I
these
know.
sheets are.
Yeah, Dave.
What we're gonna do is what you have to do is how many sheets of paper you have to stand up and say something about yourself. So
For each sheet.
For each sheet.
Oh, no.
Okay. So I've got one piece. So I just
That's not fair. You are mute.
You're right.
That's not fair.
Everybody's there.
It can't be used when you do this.
Where are they going?
I don't know.
Okay. So I got one sheet. So I'm Dave. That's Michelle's turn.
I'm Michelle Homburger. I'm married to Dave almost 2 years ago, and we're expecting our first baby in January.
Yay! Go ahead, Dan. Since you started.
No, I'm at the last.
Oh, I got 4 sheets of paper. I got 4 sheets of paper, of which I had 5, because I got 5 grandchildren in here.
You gotta say more.
That's one thing. That's one.
All right. One of them is Ashley. Another one is
Ah,
Andy.
gee.
Another one is Aaron. And then we'll just split this one in half. And that's Barnabas and Elisha.
Yay.
I have 8. I'm Ann. Okay. I
belong to Ola and Dick. More time.
They belong to you?
Yes, they do. I claim them as well. What else can I say? Had oatmeal for breakfast. Let's see. Have a cat named Sophie.
Where do you live?
I live in Kansas City. Thank you. I'm a nurse. I have a major drug supply. He has stocked it.
What cabin you in? So what cabin are you in? Okay.
Drift, yeah, real drifty.
Yeah, and, oh yeah, I'm in the driftwood.
Okay, Heidi. Okay, Heidi.
I don't know what to say.
Well, it's really
Tell us who you are.
What's your name?
Go ahead, stand up.
Stand up. Tell us who your favorite
What
uncle
to
is.
say, Dad?
Tell us your name. Stand up and say, my name is.
Come on, Heidi.
You can do it. That's it.
Tell everybody how many.
Want to.
Please. Just tell us how old you are.
4 years old.
Very
Good.
There you go.
What's your name?
Heidi.
Good.
Yeah, you did it.
Okay. Where's that Phil?
No, it's Phil. Hey, my name really isn't Phil. It's just a ruse. I forgot. I now live in Texas. I used to hate mankind, but I got better. And boy, I've never been to Disneyland.
Oh, no.
That I remember.
Right
I
child.
was going to say.
That I remember.
Okay, my name is Carol. I'm not a nurse. And I arrived in a camper.
Painful birth.
My name is Howard. I'm married to Carol. I have 3 children. I'm not sure how many grandchildren there are around here. And I'm one of the professional majority, apparently, in this family of CPAs. But anything else, don't you?
Yeah, Richard's one too.
Well, when did you say everybody wants?
No, I'm sorry I walked out. I hate these things. Really.
Why didn't you take Fred along while you were
No, but it has nothing to do with
No, Philip, let me say something. We have done group sessions for the last 20 years. It really feels very awkward. I would prefer to really get to know everybody on a one-to-one basis, to enjoy meeting people and really getting to know them. I find if I get to know everybody tonight, what am I going to do the next 2 days? Like,
Don't tell me.
so,
It's their game.
I mean, we've heard a lot about even Peter's new part of the family, to know them well enough, and I think they heard about us.
So we'll just skip you. How's that? Go on. Okay, whoever wants to be skipped, you're going to be skipped? Yes. Okay. I already have 8 sentences, please.
I was very sparse, so
You played one. He was just being here.
I give my back to you. So I'll just say that I am Wolf, and I got this one from Arlene.
Okay. I'm Lori Homburger. I'm married to Fred. I come from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Last year we made a trip and we're in Grand Junction, and one of you lives there. Thank you. That's the next one. We are on a trip by car. We came today, and we will stay an extra week.
Were you reading that?
Of course not. I learned it by heart. And now I can wear my tie again.
I'm Fred, and I'm glad I only took 2 sheets. Was it pass?
Nobody knows me, and I think I said enough.
Yes,
Okay.
Go on, Ash.
I'm Ashley Laura Homburger. I'm 2 years old, and I live in Arlington, Texas.
Yeah. And she has dimples.
I'm Debbie. I live in Arlington, Texas. I'm married to Phil. He's the son of Peter, the brother of David, the brother of Julia, and the son of Carol.
Come on, Aaron.
My name's Erin Homburger. I live in Arlington, Texas. I love spaghetti. I'm glad to be here. My parents are Phil and Debbie, and I have 2 sisters.
Otherwise, I would take one sheet.
That's Alicia. I'm Alicia. I'm Alicia. You can just sit there. Say, I'm Alicia.
I'm Alicia, and I'm 6 years old.
And I'm Linda Olson. Pa is my stepdad, and he... About me, okay. Peter Homburger's my stepdad, Pa, you call him Pa. Anyway, and then my husband is Jack, and we live in Grand Junction, so, Colorado.
How about Barnabas?
Oh, sorry, he didn't take it, wasn't taking you, so he just ripped rice.
My name's Nancy Perigo. There's an O in my name too. I live in Fort Collins, but I'm moving to Oregon next month, and I drove here in a hot car.
And that wasn't hot, like, nice.
How you doing? Good to see you. It's been a long time. Yeah.
Following an old habit, I took 6.
Oh, good.
My name is Dick. That counts for 1. Yep. My middle initial is H.
That's awesome. All right.
H stands for hands. I don't have the faintest idea why they named me hands.
Hello, Ruth. Hello, Paul. Hello, Judy. You're coming to the group session. How are you? It's nice to see you. Hi, you're Judy? Yes, nice to meet you. I'm Emmy.
Let's take a break for a minute to greet the newcomers.
My birth certificate says Ursula. Among my family, I'm Ulla. Among my friends in Wichita where I live, I'm Ursula. So I hope I don't confuse you. Here we go. We used to have pets. We don't have pets anymore, but we love Aunt's cat. I fell asleep in the car on the way driving over here.
Mustn't count, Ulla.
Yes, let's stand.
Okay.
I'm Stan. I only took 1 sheet. I would like to say that it's very nice getting to know the Homburger family. You all are a great group of people.
Even though you don't know yet.
That's quite a list there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made a mistake and took too many. I think I'm in trouble. See, I'm Eve, and my middle name is Alice, and my last name is Homburger, and I was born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And my mother is Laura over there, and my father is Fred over there. And my brother, who is arriving tonight with Michael and Debbie, is Frank. And let's see, I moved to Orlando, Florida, which is where Disney World is, and you all are invited to come see me whenever. Just let me know in advance, so there's a bed. And
At least a month?
yeah, at least a month. No, actually, oh, that's a good one. Actually, I got a friend staying there right now without me being there, so that's whatever. And I play tennis, and I like to water ski, I like to do sports. And what else? Don't make me start over again. I like to read, and I like to travel, and our flight was canceled this morning, so we couldn't get bumped. But we got here on time anyhow, and I'm glad to be here, and don't be a smart aleck and make me do it over.
Paul, did you catch that? So as many sheets as you have, you just say whatever you'd like, right? That's right. Preferably something about yourself. So it's my, go ahead. Okay. Well, we have 4 sheets. This will be tough. My name is Paul Homburger. I was born in Oakland in 1961. I gave up a helicopter flight to come here today. And I enjoy outdoor sports, so I think this is going to be a great weekend.
Okay.
Judy?
My name is Judy. I married Paul 4 years ago. We have 2 cats, Milo and Napoleon. And I was born in Walnut Creek, California.
Ruth.
Ruth. How many did I take, my God? More than three.
Private joke, guys.
My name is Ruth, and somewhere over there's my husband. He doesn't want to sit beside me. And I'm a native Coloradoan. Love this group. And I'm grandma to almost all of them here, I think. Yeah. And I'm just tickled to have everybody back to see us.
Yay.
Okay.
Steve!
We found him. There's no cancer.
How you doing? Good to see you.
Sorry, it was a little loud.
We started early?
Okay, we found him.
Sorry,
You found a way here.
sorry.
Don't let him know.
Why do I do toilet
Now you gotta play the game. Here, take one. This is a good one, really.
You're gonna do Snapchat?
Yeah.
Do what? Are you joking?
Grab Lisa too.
Lisa, you need toilet paper.
Lisa.
I'm playing. Doesn't have a toilet paper.
You too, Steve. Good
for you, Steve. Try to see you take a man's size. Heidi, let's sit with Mama Carol or I'm sure. He's got
We'll make sure that
let's sit Mama Carol.
Birthday and anybody can give me a birthday present, there's still time. I can't believe everybody's really here. I don't work here, I just know people who work here. Let's see, we're running out of things fast.
What's your name?
My name is Steve. I drive a Nissan. That Ann and Phil and Dave and Drew and me all went and gave a salesman a heart attack when we bought it.
That's right. Doesn't take too much.
So funny. Even the game too.
There's a good reason for this.
That's for the future.
Let's see, I work at the YMCA for those of you who don't know. I'm responsible for your t-shirts. I hope you like them all. I'm sorry Texas didn't come out on the t-shirts.
Really?
I've got my house that I'm having a great time with. That I've lived there for 2 years, and I'm really glad to be here.
Joanna, it's all yours.
Heidi.
I knew I took too much. I knew it even before I knew what this was. Okay, my name's Joanna, and I'm from the East Bay Homburgers. We live in the East Bay. I played this before. I was born in Oakland. I teach preschool for the city of El Cerrito. They're 2 to 3 years old. I just bought a new car, and it's a Toyota Starlet.
Who's next? Lisa. Lisa.
Hello, I'm Lisa Homburger from Toronto, Canada.
I need
You've already done it.
Uncle Walter. You have to hold. Did you take him? He's got no resistance.
I don't need it. I'm also from Toronto. All of us are from Toronto. Except that Mike isn't here yet.
Since
He's on
he's
his
the
way.
oldest, he can.
That's right. And we are delighted to be here and meet all these young people we've never met before. And I'm sure we'll get to know everybody very, very well by the time we're through on Monday.
Good. Okay, now since everybody's got nice and comfortable sitting down, it's a chance for everybody to
Hear
stand up.
about you and Michelle. Come on, you're the ones who. We
already did it.
I started it.
There's Michelle. Michelle.
was yours.
No, I still have
Okay,
some.
Phil. Ready? Tell me what to look at.
You've been shorting
Look at
yours.
Phil.
No, it's not that
You've always been shortchanged.
yet. Yes. My name is Philip Lee Homburger, son of Peter, son of Carol, brother of a bunch of bums, father of a bunch of beautiful children. I got sprayed by somebody's A&W root beer and it fell out of the back of my van. And this is for that little dab that never seems to get taken care of.
I got you very well.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Like I said, now that everybody should know who everybody is somewhat, what we're going to do is it's a, where everybody can stand up and move around. You can talk to everybody. What it is a sort of...
Since I came back, you know, I really realized what a special family this is. And I'm proud to be a member. And yeah, I look forward to the future as well.
Great.
Very good. Cheers. And since Michael has to leave soon, may I say on behalf of our family, very happy that everyone to be here, and we are very grateful for all the people who were involved to make this happen and to make it possible.
Oh, here. You want to move right on to...
Yeah, well, maybe we do that too.
Maybe this is a good time before we really eat and get gubby.
Okay, you get...
Hold on, nobody's
here to plan it.
Is this true? You volunteered?
And they better do it because their father isn't going to help.
We must accept this nomination by acclamation.
Okay, who does it? Okay. Quiet, please. Steve. Right, he's there.
On behalf of all of us, Steve, there's a little memento for you. I hope it will remind you of your great effort and your most faithful. And if you don't like it, you can exchange it. But it's Where's Ruth and Peter? Ruth and Peter. Ruth and Peter. We have to put all these things here and you have some work to do. And there's a card.
Which needs 3 more signatures.
And you have to
Aaron.
open it up.
Aaron.
No, it's all done.
Yeah.
This is for Ruth and Peter, and thank you very much, because I'm sure it was your basic ideas which you planted in your children. And that they made it happen. And where's Anne? Anne wants to sign her card. So she can sign her card. That was the Steve very irresponsible.
You're welcome.
You want to see it? Do you know what it is? It's an antique duck. It's an antique duck.
They are collector's items.
They're collector's items.
Some more, so.
You do? You know, they wanted to keep a candle holder. So I said, no, I think something is natural there.
What time do you get? Was it particularly heavy?
They will let you.
Amy?
You didn't leave anything to...
I got the instructions there.
I hope this works. Just take a video of the family.
Somebody said 2 years.
He's got 5 habits. He's got every one of those. We got enough food here for tonight.
6:30.
6:30, okay.
6:30.
The whole place is really. Tonight, we're all media.
And Eve and Anne were both saying, you know, we really don't know what happened there in the early days with you guys. And our parents never told us too much. Sometimes they did, sometimes they don't. Why can't we have a little get together and we can all chat, or you can chat about what happened to you people? And I said, that's a great idea, and let's try to do it. And maybe I'll start it off by Fred, who told me something which I didn't know. That when I was 1 month old, Fred saw me being breastfed by my mother. That's the first time that I knew that I was breastfed and not bottle fed. And maybe Fred, you can elaborate on that, because
it was also the first time that I knew that such things occur. I went home to I was about 6, and I went home to my mother and told her I had just seen the most disgusting thing.
And then your mother told you what the facts were,
She
right?
told me that this was normally done that way and that there was nothing unusual.
And not disgusting necessarily.
I still thought it was terrible, and I suspected that your mother on purpose wanted me to see it as an educational tool.
Yeah. And the other thing that I remember when Fred and I talked was when we were in Switzerland. And usually the Fred family was on one side of the valley, and the Homburger family was on the other side, up on the mountains too. Yeah, but I mean the Richter ones. And one summer, the 3 of us were there, and my grandmother died. And I had, which I didn't remember either, you tell it, because you remember it better than I do.
You don't want me to tell the whole thing, do you?
Just a short thing.
Which 3 of you?
The Wolf and Peter and I. Okay. And Father had to go back for the funeral, and we were put in charge of some...
I went back too.
You went back too?
With him. You were in charge of some lady.
We were in charge of some lady at the hotel, but then you came back.
I came back and I took you back.
And then he was our babysitter, and he took us
that time
back.
I was about 16, so you must have been about 10.
And then I hiked once with Fred, and he doesn't remember that too well, through the Black Forest for 2 weeks. Just the 2 of us with a rucksack.
And I got a picture of it at home.
And we had a good time.
I think most of you probably have seen the pictures that Peter brought home from Mutti from New York and had redone. You probably, the Denver crowd, have seen it, have you? Have you seen it?
Yes. Yeah, we have a set.
Are these the ones we just saw?
Yeah. No.
You got copies too.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you have, okay.
And the Homburgers are expert croquet players, because when we were youngsters, Richard and Fred and certainly I, and I don't know who else, used to play croquet in the garden of where Fred and Richard lived. I don't know how good you were, Richard.
On our way down to Granby, Wolf and I were talking, because I didn't know, for instance, how I got some of the things mixed up with Mutti told me how everybody got out of Germany. I think some of these things are very interesting to the young people too. To know, Wolf, where are you?
I'm over here.
How did you get here?
Well, I think that certainly Fred and Richard, who were over here and doing all the work trying to get out. I'll start it and then let Fred go on.
Yeah.
I'll just say that, first of all, when the Nazi business got fairly serious, the people that were sort of in their late teens, early 20s, like Fred, Richard, my uncle Max Bredig and others of that age, all managed to emigrate one way or another to the United States. This was in, what, 37, 38 or something like that.
Well, Max was, we came in 40.
You came in 40?
We were in Switzerland.
Oh, you were in
Yeah, but how did all that happen? How
I
did
went
you all
through
manage
the-
to
How you got out, actually, is what they want to know.
Well, there were various underground railroads, or whatever you want to call it, various routes to get out for people who made an early decision to go. One of the big problems was that the older generation were hanging in there, hoping things would get better, and
They had
of
too much
course,
to lose.
my 2 brothers and I were too young to be going off on our own. But then about the beginning of '39, the Quakers in England set up a program called Kindertransport, where they persuaded the government of England to accept Jewish children, but not adults, because adults might compete for jobs, if those children had sponsors in England. And that's how the three of us got out of Germany before the war broke out. Now, in 1940, in October of 1940, the Nazis interned all the remaining Jews except a few doctors and nurses and sent them to a camp in Vichy, France, without first telling the Pétain government what they were even doing. They just herded them onto trains. This was Olive Baden and the Pfalz.
Girls, you mean, not Vichy?
Vichy, France.
Oh, Vichy, France.
Vichy, France.
Could you explain to the young ones what Vichy France was? I don't know what I...
Okay, during the war, the Nazis, the Germans invaded France and captured it within weeks. The French just folded up. And this was in May or June of May. It started in May of 40. And after they'd captured it, they decided in their wisdom that they would only administer the northern half and would let the southern half be administered by a man called General Pétain, who put his government in a little town called Vichy, which is why it was called Vichy France. Of course, Pétain had to do exactly what the Germans told him anyway. So in October of that year, I think I've heard the number of 10 trainloads of Jews from the provinces of Baden and Pfalz suddenly arrived in Lyon in the railroad yards there, and nobody knew what to do. And then somehow or other it dawned on them the Germans were telling them to intern these Jews somewhere. Well, the French had built some camps in the Pyrenees to house refugees from the Spanish Civil War. Most of those camps were empty. There were, I think, 4 of them. One of them was at Gurs, and there were actually still a few Spaniards living there. Not many, I think. It was more or less shut down. So they finally just said, well, that's what we'll have to do. And all of these people arrived without any preparation. There were no personnel even to run the camps. There was no bedding, nothing. In October, it gets pretty cold already.
Tell who was in your, Paul, Marianne?
Well, in our intimate group, my parents, Fred and Laura's father, Mr. and Mrs. Mars, and Mr. Mars died there, lack of medical attention, and the youngest daughter of the Marses. And there were many other Karlsruhe people there, obviously, because there were many from Baden.
They were given 2 hours notice, if I remember correctly, I was told.
Well, I don't remember the figure, but that's
quite right. 2 hours notice, and they were allowed to carry 2 suitcases, right, each?
Whatever they could carry.
Whatever they could carry.
Plus 100 marks.
Plus what?
Plus 100 marks.
100 marks.
Now,
you might mention...
Rough statistics are that about 11,000 of them were on those 10 trains. About 1,000 of them got out by means that Fred can describe. Another 1,000 died there, mostly of diseases for which there was no medical attention and so forth, dysentery. And the other 9,000 were eventually sent to Auschwitz and disappeared. Maybe you want to take it up from there.
I don't know. What I read originally from 5 cities, there were about 10,000, and 1,000 committed suicide on the trip.
Oh.
So that only 9,000 arrived.
Well, I know a lot of committed suicide during 2 hours before being picked up.
Yeah, well, before or during the trip. And bodies were taken off at various places, including, I think, Lyon and so on. And they did get water, but no food during those 3 days. Something like that. Go ahead.
No, I thought you might now tell how people like you
people
get out.
At that point you were in New York.
Alright, we were in New York, young, inexperienced.
Without a penny.
I was 22, just graduated in Switzerland and starting to work as a draftsman in a language that I only had a school knowledge of, making $15 a week and having nothing. And there are 6 people that are stuck in a camp in the southwestern corner of France, with the help mainly of Max Bredig, your, what is it to you? Uncle?
Uncle.
He was Marianne's
your stepmother's brother. He did the lion's share of the work. He also made at $75 a week, which at that time was a huge fortune. Well, it was 5 times what I made. So the 3 of us I don't know if you want to add anything, Richard. Richard, Max Bredig and I had to somehow help 6 people stuck in this camp. They could telegraph immediately, and they did. We knew within a day or 2 of their arrival at Gurs where they were and how to address them. They were not the French did not mistreat them, but the problem was food and getting them out while they were still alive. They were diseased, typhus and so on. And also the camp, the 9,000 people or so in the camp consisted essentially of people under 20 and over 50. There was practically nobody between 20 and 50 for the reasons that Walter and Wolf explained, because they had already left. So there were only old people and young people, which made it very complicated. We didn't know what to send. I think I mentioned to some of you yesterday, as soon as we got the telegram, I had some very rich friends in Zurich. I immediately sent them a telegram giving them the address of these people and see whether anything they could do. The first thing they did is send them a huge crate of fruit which arrived, and they said, however, they brought us back from the camp, however, fruit is about the only thing they have in abundance. They are practically living on fruit, they get nothing else. And what they need is needles and thread and items of that sort. But we went naturally first to the Jewish organizations, American Jewish organization. I'm sorry to say there was absolutely no help whatsoever.
I must, however, add that's your opinion.
Yeah, it's my personal experience. It was my personal experience.
It's only fair.
Yes. They didn't want to get involved. They were afraid that anti-Semitism would start in this country, and the more people came over, the better it would. And they certainly wouldn't do anything for a whole batch of as many as 9,000, all of them either old or young, and none of them in their prime working years. But anyway, we had to handle it for the Maas part, the 3 originally, one died, of the Maas family, because by the time you knew of a ship available, it was too late in California to do anything. You had to be in New York to do it. So we did it for the Maas as well, and eventually.
The big problem being getting a ship passage.
Getting a ship passage, the money to pay for it. Getting the money to pay for it by hook or by crook somehow. Also, in the very beginning, this is just to show how ridiculous things can get. At the very beginning, their immigration applications, of course, were in Germany, in Stuttgart specifically, which was a corrupt consulate in the first place, where you could buy yourself, for a while, that had been cleaned up by that time, a higher immigration number if you had the money. But anyway, that's where their papers were. Now they were suddenly in Vichy, France, and the consulate was in Marseille.
And you need a visa,
and you need, of course, you needed to get the papers processed. So the rule in Marseille was for any person that wants their papers transferred from Stuttgart to Marseille, they must first appear in person to show that they're alive and that they're really there and identify themselves. Then their case will be handled. So they went to the camp commander in Gurs and said, we need a pass for 1 day to go to Marseille. And he said, you will get that pass as soon as you have a letter from Marseille asking you to come. And we have a little camp established outside Marseille, and you will be processed there and can stay there for 1, 2, 3 days, whatever is needed. But you must first have the letter from the consulate, and the consulate wouldn't write the letter unless you appear in person. So the method used, I don't know the details because Max Bredig handled that part of it, was to bribe somebody in Washington to get that letter written, and unfortunately you had to pay the price before the letter was written. But they kept their word, the letter was written and everything was smoothed out. Some lawyers in Washington made a little bit of money on the side from people who barely had any. But we had 5 tickets for each of them on 2 different lines, and one of them a Portuguese line. They did come over on, and I'm happy to say they were the first 5 of the 9,000 to arrive in the United States.
And there was
from
one more little bump in the road, namely that to get from Marseille to Lisbon, you had to cross Spain and of course Portugal. And I think they had a little trouble getting the visas to cross those countries.
Yes, my father never talked about it. I do not know. If
I think
you
there
know,
was-
go ahead.
there was a
I don't
little-
know the details how it
I don't
went.
know details, I just know that they mentioned this as one additional.
He never talked about the conditions, to me anyway, in Gers, in all the years that he lived here, he never did. And
Fred,
I didn't have the guts to ask, believe me.
Fred, wasn't it though until a specific time that Hitler would even allow people to leave a camp? Because after, I think, 41, nobody was even allowed anymore, no matter what relations they had anywhere, they wouldn't allow them anywhere. So they just got under the deadline out.
Well, this particular Gers episode really started because two German states, you would call it here, were united by the Nazis, Baden and Württemberg. They were united, and one of them was free of Jews, Württemberg, and the other one was not. And what you would call governor of the surviving one was the one that didn't have any. So he said, this can't be, so the other have to get out. This is how that happened in October or November of 1940.
How did you get
These two states are still one today, by the way. They were never re-separated, even after the war.
I still remember it was May 21st, my birthday, 1941, that we got the telegram that Fadi and Mutti were in Lisbon and were about to board the Nyassa, was the name of the
Yeah,
ship,
that's right.
and to come over here.
How did they get to the ship from the camp if they didn't have any money or anything at all? How'd they?
Did you telegraph them the train fare
How'd
to
they
the
know?
ship?
From the Max Predik was Mutti's brother.
But he was in the States.
He arranged everything from the States.
Well, was some of
You
this
remember,
handled
Richard,
through
I think
Red Cross?
most of the stuff was done by Max, wasn't it?
Yeah, the question though was how did they get from France?
How did they physically get from
How did they physically get there?
How did they physically get there?
By train.
What?
They
Did
went
they go
from
by
Marseille to
train?
Lisbon by train.
So they allowed them to do that to get on the train?
Once they got all the visas,
I believe.
The necessary exit visas until a certain time. In some camps, Gers was probably. I don't know that in Dachau anybody was even allowed anymore. Or Auschwitz or
No.
But Gers was sort of not quite that kind of camp.
So they allowed them to go once they had to.
When they had their papers and they could.
Well, I
if they
believe
had-
people were released from Dachau if they had exit visas, I believe.
and
They
up
were,
to some
to
days.
After some day, I couldn't believe it.
Yes,
But how did you get over on a regular visa into the States?
Where you
I had a visa. I got my visa in Switzerland. I had my waiting number in Stuttgart, which was of course way too high, but I was in Switzerland at the time I obtained my visa, and at that time this line of supply had dried up, so that I got my visa much earlier.
In 40?
What?
1940?
You were by 40,
By boat?
I applied it actually in early 41.
By boat?
By boat.
You and Fred together?
No, within a few weeks.
Within a few weeks.
Walter, why don't you tell what happened to you as the one who was 16 when England was threatened by the invasion of the Germans?
Well, we came out on the children's transfer to England, and I was at age 6, I went to a college, Eastbourne College, at Eastbourne, where I was a resident there and trying to learn English. And Wolf and Peter went to a prep school, because they were younger than I was and they weren't ready for college yet. And then on May the 10th, I think it was 1940, the British panicked because the lowlands were being invaded by the Germans. And they decided that, I was classed as a friendly enemy alien by the British. And then the British panicked when the lowlands were overrun and interned everybody, whether they were friendly enemy aliens or whatever, that were German between the ages of 16 and 60. And one Sunday they swooped down, Oxford, Cambridge, you name it, and they interned all of us. And we went from camp to camp, and more and more people came together, and we landed up on the Isle of Man in internment camps. They'd taken over the whole strip of the beautiful hotels on the waterfront, and we spent the time there cleaning up, etc., and waiting what happens next. And then they had organized boats and they transported those quotes prisoners of war either to Australia or to Canada. And they told both countries, we're sending you prisoners of war.
But you were mixed with Nazi refugees
well, we
and
didn't know
Nazi
that at that
criminals.
point. So one day we were told, okay, get ready, you're going. And we went on a boat, and we didn't know where we were going until we saw it was heading west. So we figured out it must be Canada. And we were in a very big transport with 2 other boats. We were on a Polish liner called Pilsudski. There wasn't enough room for everybody to sleep. I slept on a dining room table and tried not to roll off, and that was quite something. And when we arrived, we were escorted by cruisers and everything else, and all sorts of rumors flew about then that the princess and princess, the present queen and her sister, were being evacuated because of all the threat. In the end, we learned that a lot of English gold was transported over, and that's why we had that great transport and great security. And we arrived in Quebec City, and on July, I think it was the 14th, 1940, and the government was told that prisoners of war coming. So as we came off the boat, they had 2 lines of soldiers with bayonets drawn, and we had to leave all our wallets, etc. there, which we never saw, of course, with any money in it, and all our watches and whatever it may be. And then they put us onto trains, and they started driving into the wilderness of Canada. No, the first thing, no, we landed in Quebec. The first couple of nights we were in a complex which I think were all railway sheds. And they just put some barbed wire around it, and that was it. And we had never been, of course, to North America, and there were big searchlights across, we noticed. So we put 3 tables, one on top of the other, because way up there were windows. And we climbed up to see what was there. And that was the first time we were exposed to an American baseball game. And in those days, it was terrible there. Everybody had dysentery, and there were very few toilets. It was an unholy mess. And we found out on the boat that on the boat were also real prisoners of war who had parachuted into Norway. And so it took us, then we were all transported together to a camp which had been cut out of the woods, like here in the middle in New Brunswick, between St. John and Fredericton. And the only thing that was there was barbed wire around and some huts that had not even windows in them. And the only way you could get into your hut is go over a ladder that was lying over a big gully. It was like chickens going into their coop, you know. And when we arrived, of course, we were all dirty. We had been on the train for a night and a half, a day and a half, whatever it was. And so that night there was a huge rainstorm and thunderstorm, and we all undressed and went straight out, and the guards didn't know what was happening. Because there were all guard towers all around. Anyway, to make a long story short, it took us about 2 months to establish that there were also some real prisoners of war, and they finally took them away. And we became a close refugee camp.
You had some good spokesmen who were older. You were just 16.
Yeah. There were some good spokesmen, and the mixture there was unbelievable. We had a world-famous astronomers. We had the Crown Prince of Germany in our group, who happened to be a cousin of the Queen and was studying in Oxford. But he was German, so he was interned. Then they asked us one day a silly question as far as we were concerned. If you had the choice, would you wish to be interned for the rest of the war or be repatriated to Germany? And they thought in their innocence that way they could find out if we had any Nazis among ourselves. You know? Anyway, then there was a committee of interested people in Canada, Jewish organizations who became interested, and we were not only Jewish, there was a great mixture, a lot of priests and other people.
Walter, tell also about the schools that all the people established.
Well, in the camp then it was organized, the Y I think was one of them, that organized the matriculation courses for the youngsters.
Because a lot of people were professors.
You know, and there were professors in the school and everything else.
And you tell what you did though.
Well, give it a chance. I was too lazy to learn. So I became a secretary to the camp spokesman. We elected our camp spokesman, I became secretary, and I survived every administration. Every 3 months they didn't like the camp spokesman anymore, so they voted him out and made a new one, but I survived. And well, there were people cutting wood in the woods, and they got paid 20 cents a day. I remember that, and that you could use in the canteen and then get your little trinkets or whatever they were. And well, it took us, then they sooner or later decided, well, we weren't so dangerous. We had volunteers for the Canadian Army. Of course, we didn't get accepted for that, we were dangerous. But then finally, they had established a system whereby if you found a sponsor in Canada who would look after you, you could get out of Canada and stay in Canada. And again, the relation of ours, Mr. Trifus, who is on our family tree, far-flung relation, I don't know what he is, but Fred will probably know, had sponsored us into England, and he had a partner in Canada in the same business. I mean, it was his partner. So he asked the partner to sponsor me. So in November of 1941, I was one of the first ones that was released in Canada into his care. And I know I spent the first 2 days in a rooming house of a Hungarian lady. And sooner or later I went to school there, and then that's where it all started. But for me on this side.
And you went into the Canadian Army then?
Oh yes, later on, of course they accepted me in the Canadian Army. And I got my basic training, and then we had embarkation leave to be sent overseas, and I spent my embarkation leave in New York visiting the parents, and that's when peace was declared. So on VE Day, I actually was on Times Square celebrating. So I was never sent overseas.
But do tell what you were doing in the army. I think the young people are entitled to hear that story that you were.
Is this Eddie Wiles' version?
I became a member of, I was in the infantry, and I got all my basic training, and I told Drew yesterday, we were shooting yesterday, and I said I haven't had a gun in my hand since army days, and when I shot targets for practice, which I did yesterday, not very successful, as Drew well knows. But then I decided, well, I go back into an office job in the army, and I went into the medical inspection corps, and I spent my time in the medical inspection room, where all the guys came in the mornings that were lead swingers, and those of you who were in the army or those who don't know what a lead swinger is, and they were always, they had headaches and couldn't go to the training that day, etc., etc. So that was my sojourn in the Canadian Army. My job was give out safes for the weekend.
Eddie Weil had a different version.
Yeah, and the allotment was 3 for the weekend.
Eddie Weil, a good friend of theirs, tells a story that Walter denies, and I wanted to deny it in front of everybody, that he also inspected for symptoms of syphilis.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. That was part of our duty.
But you know, he was very squeamish. He used to faint when somebody else would get the injection. So
you don't have to go into those details.
Tell the joke. I think that is.
Oh, I don't know if I can tell the joke around here.
Sure.
Well, anyway, the medical officer was also an internment camp guy that I knew from internment camp. We landed up in the same unit, etc. And it became very boring there after a while. And I said, I'm going to have some fun this weekend. And I, having to give out all these safes, I decided to make 3 piles: small, medium, and large. And I said, let's see what happens. And the guys came in and looked. I've never seen anything like that before, right? So they discussed it among themselves with this, whatever it is. And then suddenly one guy came back and said, sorry, I have to exchange them, I took the wrong one. Well, by that time we broke up, and I wasn't allowed to continue with that one anymore.
That I didn't hear before.
That's how we spent our time. So that's how I came to North America, whereas Wolf and Peter came legally. And they didn't get a free, well, I actually had also applied to come to the United States, but I figured since I had gotten a free trip into Canada, I might as well stay there, which I did. But they legally got out.
Richard and Fred should maybe tell the youngsters also how your parents, I mean your father, Uncle Paul and Mariana and Victor, when they came, what their situation was like when they came. What?
Well, I'm a little older, just a little bit. The rest of you folks, so if you forgive me just a few minutes, maybe I can backtrack just a little bit and mention a few things. I think I'm the only one in the group here who has been through World War I. I believe all the rest of you have been only through World War II. During World, I was born.
I went through 2 or 3 weeks of World War I.
That was one important already when I was born. My father served in the German army, I remember him in uniform visiting when he came on occasional leave. My mother took me to her hometown, Breiten, which is near the Odenwald, living with her father there. I went also to a kindergarten. I do remember this, and it's maybe of historical interest, I don't know. When we, after the war, moved back to Karlsruhe, I believe we had arranged for an apartment there. But for the first few days, so the first night, we stayed at my grandparents' home on the Schlossplatz. I have shown that to some of you in pictures just opposite the castle of the Grand Duke on the Schlossplatz, nice large apartment. I remember, what?
That was on the Tika?
That was on the Tika, okay. I believe it was. I remember, you know, I'm very food oriented. I still remember I was given an early meal and it was spinach and some fish and something. I was not allowed to eat with the others and was put to bed. When I woke up in the morning, I was on a totally different end of the house, in a totally different room, which scared me half to death at the moment. As it turned out, and it was explained to me, they expected a revolution to break out, and they expected, it was rumored that the Grand Duke was going to leave for Holland. They were afraid that there would be shooting and that windows might be smashed, since they were just right opposite the castle. So I thought it safer to put me to another room. There's all little things to remember. Now jumping a little bit back to forward to the Hitler period. As you know, I talked to some of you, I studied in Switzerland because our family thought by the time 4-year study, getting doctorate in Switzerland, Hitler would be all over, and then I would go to the bank and work there on my way up. Well, when I came back in 1937, nothing much had changed. I worked in our bank. As a matter of fact, I enjoyed it. The first sign of trouble came when my parents had organized a trip to Italy, planned with Fred and myself. I remember that. They started a week earlier because Fred had, I believe, still a semester to finish, and then we were then to join them later on in Italy. As it happened, my parents got out on their visa and took the trip as planned. When I tried to cross into Switzerland to join them, join my father, my passport was confiscated and there's nothing left for me to do, to go back, take the next plane back to Karlsruhe. And that was quite a traumatic experience, of course. I want to say that to you folks. Your father, Victor, was extremely nice to me at that time. I visited with him at his apartment and what would be done. His sister Helene, who also, Helen as I would say, was also at the apartment that time, constantly butting into our conversation until Victor got so mad at her that he threw her out of the room. Could calmly discuss the matter with me. I hope I'm not going too long.
No, that's wonderful.
Personal reminiscences.
It's history.
Yeah, it is history for me. For me, certainly it is, and you have been told it is history. My parents arranged then for Fred, since they were worried about me alone there. In a pretty desperate situation in Germany, so they let Fred join me and take a trip through Germany, which you probably remember. Fred was driving. Now,
well, you're talking 35 now?
No, 38. Summer 38. As a matter of fact, I remember we were in Frankfurt when the Germans marched into, was it Austria or was it the Sudetenland at that time? It was in
38 was, spring of 38 was Austria. Sudetenland was fall of 38.
I suspect it was the Anschluss.
The rest of Czechoslovakia was early 39.
Yeah, it was during our trip when we were staying overnight in one of the big cities.
The Anschluss was during that trip?
Either the Anschluss or the march into Sudetenland.
Well, that would make it about April 38.
I'm not sure. We finished our trip, Fred went back to Switzerland. I stayed in Germany. I suppose I continued working for a while at the bank, Fred in Homburger. Now, as to the events leading to what we all know as the Kristallnacht, I was playing.
Better explain that. Not crystal.
Well, all right, then let me just explain step by step what I remember as again, because at that time we didn't know anything either. It was that was the shock effect of this whole thing, because it's easy to look back. It is very difficult to look forward if you know nothing. Some personal things that you all know. I'm interested in music. I played cello at that time. I had a nice musical group. One was Henry Maas, who was invited to come here. He played piano very well. I played the cello. As a violinist, we had Alfred Jakubowicz was his name. He was a Polish Jew who was a member of our congregation, our Jewish congregation there. We had a very nice group. We played incidentally all the Beethoven trios. That's why I'm so fond of the Beethoven trios. We played others too, but Beethoven our favorite. Now, as you may or may not know, on November, approximately November the 3rd, 1 week before the so-called Kristallnacht, police action was taken and all the Polish Jews were transported to the Polish frontier. I know it was a pretty desperate situation for them. The Poles didn't want to let them in, the Germans didn't want to let them back. Our violinist, Jakubowicz, was among that group. And of course the family was very desperate. I remember that our rabbi, Dr. Schiff, at that time called a meeting, and he had me in it and some other young people just to see what could be done. Of course nothing could be done. And as far as Jakubowicz is concerned, he made it. These people who were on the German-Polish frontier eventually were liberated, were allowed to the extent it was possible through action from the pretext for an action that had been planned long before, but that nobody knew about, to imprison all the male Jews between 18 and 60 or whatever the age limits were. This action took place on November 10, 1938. That's known as Kristallnacht. Now, you shut me off if I'm going too long. I just report to you exactly as I remember the events of that day. Early in the morning, at 7 already, my father, he hadn't even gotten up yet, received a call from one of the tenants at our bank that furniture was demolished, that the windows had been smashed and all that, and nobody knew what was going on. My father immediately got up, got dressed and rushed out to the bank to see what could be done. A little later he called, it was about 10 in the morning, saying that, God, it's, when you think of those things, it's amazing. But I think I remember it correctly. He said it was a very strange situation. They all, Victor as well as my father, had gone to the Chamber of Commerce building to talk to the officials there what to be done. He said it was a strange situation. All the Jewish bankers there, Jewish businessmen, they were all assembled there. They were not allowed to go any place, but he could make the phone call, so he couldn't give any other information. Shortly thereafter, our bell rang, and they went after me, took me to the police station. At the police station, I met my father, who was brought in shortly after I had been born in. The trucks were waiting outside to take him away to a concentration camp. This is a person that I had an acute health problem at that time, which made it possible for me to be excused. This was not the action of the SS or the SI, it was the action of the police who were in charge, to whom I reported my situation, and they said, you just stay here. I did not know what was going to happen to me, but I stayed from about 11 in the morning until about 8 at night in police headquarters, and then there were several others in my situation who were then dismissed. Now, as it turned out, Victor stayed about 3 weeks, I believe, in Dachau, then returned home, and a week later my father Paul also came
Explain
home.
why Wolf had an explanation why they were allowed home.
This was a scare. That's what most people don't understand. All these camps, including Dachau, later, how do you call them? They became death camps, you know.
No, that's not. At that point they were not.
Not true. Dachau never
Not
was a
at
death
that
camp.
point. Not at that
Never.
point. No, Dachau later became a death camp.
In the last week, perhaps. In the
That's
final
right.
week, perhaps. Dachau was a concentration camp almost to the end.
Okay.
The ovens were used to dispose of bodies who had died from disease, abuse, and so on. There were no gas chambers at Dachau. To be a extermination camp,
Well, anyway,
it has to have a gas chamber.
It was a scare tactic to try to force Jews out of the country by whatever means possible. I do not know, and we don't know to this day, what determined the length of time that they were held in Dachau. I know that Victor stayed 3 weeks and that my father stayed.
Didn't you have to practically sign the bank away?
Part of it was to sign the business away.
That's right.
This was not signed away until they went to go.
Well, agree that they would. Agree that they would.
On the railroad station when they were finally transported to Gurs. Now,
No, you're off.
Well,
The liquidation started on January 39. Gurs was in October 40. The dates are off.
Yeah.
The bank was liquidated based on something signed at Dachau.
Well, anyway,
About a year and a half at least
I was
before Gurs.
able to obtain first a British visa, which incidentally I never used. I had my waiting number at the consulate in Stuttgart to go to the United States, which at that time was far too high. I was able, for health reasons, to get a visa to go to Switzerland, and actually managed to emigrate in, I believe, March 1939, to go to Switzerland, where I stayed for almost a year. And then, by that time, the requests for waiting numbers and for immigration visa to the US from Germany had dried up because people couldn't get out anymore. So as a result of this, my number came up much sooner in Switzerland than it would normally have come up either in Germany or in Britain had I gone there, because that quota had not been nearly exhausted.
How did you get money to go to Switzerland if they had already taken everything away? And how did you live in
I
Switzerland?
was supported by some relatives of my mother who lived in Holland at that time.
You know
They
them.
paid, what?
Eve knows Nancy, you know.
Oh,
That's the connection.
people work as a
the
waitress.
London Bridge, the,
Oh.
Nancy's grandfather was quite well off.
I'd just like to insert here for those who don't know the Leicester Kristallnacht that this was first of all nationwide. It was happening in every city in Germany. And besides smashing all of the businesses that were known to be owned by Jews, and for many months before, many of those businesses, they had painted stars of David on them and said, owned by Jews and things of this type. They also burnt down or otherwise pretty well desecrated every synagogue, probably every one. I doubt they missed any, all over Germany. They desecrated many of the cemeteries, turned over gravestones and so on. They also passed an order evicting all of us from schools, the general schools, and so essentially telling the Jewish community, you better set up some schools for your own children now. And I know that we three found out on the morning of either the 10th or the 11th of November that we were no longer allowed to go to the school we'd been going to.
Except I was already in a Jewish school.
You were in Frankfurt, but Pete and I. Yeah, but Pete and I.
And this is where Honey also then was employed to look after you two. And this is Honey and Teresa, who is in Jerusalem. If you youngsters ever want to go there, they are founders of Israel, really, and they live both on kibbutzes. And that might be also something of interest to you. They are wonderful people.
I'd like to, if I may, change the pace a little bit from this sad stories. I know you might be interested in some of our ancestors, but we have still known that you have never known. I'm thinking primarily of my grandparents on my father's side, Fritz and Sophie. Fritz I have known only as a very small boy. He had me ride on his leg, hopper ride. I remember. He was a kindly man with a long beard, beautiful beard. But he died at an early age, around 70. And I don't remember him too well.
1919.
1919, yeah, that I would have been 5 years old then. His wife Sophie, I remember her very well. I want to tell a little bit about her, because I feel very close to her.
Sure.
She was very lonely. She lived her last years in an apartment on the Beethovenstraße, way up on the third floor. There were no elevators. She had to climb those stairs as long as she could climb, otherwise she just stayed. I believe you mentioned that, what's her name? The lady who took care of her.
Louise?
Louise, yeah, she took care of her, but since she was lonely, during my high school years, I visited with her quite frequently in the evenings. And these meetings were very valuable to me. She was, I remember her as an extremely well-educated, extremely intelligent, and also very nice lady, who of course liked me to come and see her. She knew that I was not drinking any alcoholic beverages. Already in those days I wasn't interested, but since she always offered my father liquor or some schnapps. She insisted offering it to me all the same. She knows I don't want it, but since she's used to offer it to my father, she offered it to me anyway. We had some very nice conversations about her childhood and her youth, and she tried to explain to me how in some ways our background was different. We did in those days what was in those days considered considerable traveling to Switzerland or into neighboring countries. She explained to me that when she was young, travel was not that common. They hardly traveled anywhere, but that the social life, parties, balls and things like this were very developed, and she told me a lot about that. I do not know, Fred, when did she die?
Who?
So
1935.
What?
1935.
I believe you were not in Karlsruhe the evening she died, were you?
No, I was in Wengen with Walter and Victor. And Victor and I.
Let me just tell you, this is just sentimental memories.
Right.
The evening she was in
83. She was 83 at the time.
That evening around 6 in the evening, Fräulein Luise called us and said that she was doing very badly. She was hemorrhaging from the bowels and I don't know what was. And she had the feeling it was the end. So we all, my parents and I was living in Karlsruhe at that time. went over there, and incidentally her physician, personal physician, was Max Neumann, that's Elizabeth Neumann's father. Not as a psychiatrist, but he was also a practicing physician. He was her father, and was her physician. And he looked after her very kindly, and he gave her a shot, and said just to make breathing a little bit and dying a little bit easier for her. And she said, why don't you let me die in Max Neumann in his usual psychiatric calm. And I said, we do not want to prevent that at all. And she had a relatively easy death. She lost consciousness, so he carried her over to her bed himself. She had hardly any weight at all, and died the same evening within an hour. This was a personal memories that I wanted to give you, since I'm the oldest here.
I do have a picture. I do have a picture of her here. And the other thing, how tall was she?
Well, awfully small.
Because she
shrunk.
The picture I have of her, Walter can't be more than 10 years old, and he's almost as tall as she is.
Yeah, she was almost small.
But Fred remembered that when we used to go there, he on Wednesdays and we on Saturdays, always for coffee and kuchen. It was always wonderful, tea or whatever it was. And I remember she had in those days a radio which was completely new in those days, and she had a crystal with crystals, and you mechanics went over that. I mean, I played around trying to find a station, and it cracked and everything else, and I was fascinated. It was wonderful.
Let me tell you a story about that radio. My grandmother, she didn't want to have anything. She didn't want any notice to be taken of her birthday. And one of her birthdays, I remember, my parents thought up to give her a beautiful big box radio that was brand new and fascinating thing. She was furious. She was terribly upset. She didn't refuse at first to even to touch it. And then after a few weeks, my parents found out from Fräulein Louise that she had used it on occasion. They were rather happy.
Well, I can add one to supplement that. This, I think, was on her 75th birthday. For her 80th birthday, our parents had installed on several landings of the staircase a folding chair. So, because she always, whenever she visited us, I or Richard had to walk back the 2 blocks to her house and go up and bring her to her door. And we knew that she got out of breath at the first floor. So for her 80th birthday, 2 or 3 of these seats were installed in critical places at the landings of the staircase. And a short time after that, some of you may have had to bring her across the street, I don't know, when she visited there. Shortly after that, she wouldn't let me go up the stairs with her anymore. She, of course, was furious that she got that and she will never use it. So she told me, no, she can go up by herself, and she has rung the doorbell already, so Louise knows she's coming, and I should go back. So then my mother told me I should stay once and watch, which I did, and of course she used the folding chair, but she was too stubborn to admit it.
Is that why we can't give you birthday presents?
Stay out of this.
I'm glad I heard the story.
That's exactly right.
It's the same family. Same family.
Lisa told us to go and see the film Au revoir mes enfants, which is a story by a French filmmaker about some Jewish children in a Catholic school in France. And Wolf told me actually the story of Madeleine and Lotte, which I didn't know. I didn't know little Eve, but the rest of the children don't know, which is also to tell you that there were people trying to help and some were helping. So would you tell us?
I'll keep it short and I'll say it from another viewpoint. There is a documentary film that we saw in Berkeley, which unfortunately hasn't been released generally, and the name of it is
Is it La Vie on the Ground by any chance?
No, it's a fairly new one. It is by a French filmmaker who was born while his mother was in hiding in this area of Vichy, France. And 40 years later, he went there and interviewed many of the old farmers and small businessmen and so on in that region.
They were Huguenots.
They were Huguenots in that region, which covered about 4 or 5 villages. And during the war, they hid, and I've forgotten the number, somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 Jews, mostly French Jews, and of course by that time Lottie herself was sort of considered French. Hid them in farmhouses. Lottie is our cousin. Richard referred to an obstreperous and interrupting aunt called Helen or Helena, and this is her daughter, who lives in Paris and who was invited here but felt she couldn't come. Anyway, they hid these people for approximately 4 years. The film also had clips from newsreel shots that were taken during the war of meetings in the town square where some Nazi official would come down from the upper part of France and harangue them, and they would all almost laugh him off the stage. They were very disrespectful to the Germans there. They were equally disrespectful for any Vichy French official. Like there was a culture minister, I think, who came and they sort of booted him out of town after a while. There was a Huguenot minister who was a bit of a focal point for all of this, and I believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Arlene, he was eventually taken by the French and one of the few people who was ever killed for what they were doing. I don't know that any of the Jews were ever killed, but a couple of the Huguenots were. And I also remember that in the interview, this young man, who of course was not just doing a cold documentary because he was emotionally involved in all of this, but he did say to one of the people, well, how did you organize all of this? And this elderly woman looked at him and said, organize? If he had tried to organize, we would have never done anything. We just did it. And this gives you a good feeling for the Huguenots in France and how they felt very strongly what they should do. There was a slightly implied criticism that the rest of the religious community in France, which was mostly Roman Catholic, wasn't at all on the same wavelengths as the Huguenots were.
Huguenots is a branch of Protestantism.
Yeah, they're a Protestant group.
Well, I think many of them remember very strongly from their church upbringing that they had a history of having been persecuted.
In France.
In fact, Exodus story is
if you read some of the French
very
historical
important to them.
novels, like I think Dumas and a couple of others, you read about the persecution of the Huguenots by France, and so they felt very strongly from their own background what it's like to be persecuted.
So it's not only in film, it's in your family.
And anyway, Lottie and her little then 1 or 2 year old baby Madeline were smuggled somehow across the border into this region and were kept there in an outlying farmhouse up in the mountains somewhere for I think about 3 years.
Lotte's husband was in the resistance.
He was in the Free French Army based in England.
And what about Helena?
Helena died in Theresienstadt, which was the model concentration camp, as it was sometimes known. This is where if some foreign dignitary said, what's all this rumor we hear about the Jews being put in concentration camps, and if he was a very obstreperous man and couldn't be shut up, they would take him to Theresienstadt, which had a nice layout and reasonably well-clothed Jews in there going off to work and so forth.
In kindergarten.
In Czechoslovakia, by the way.
In kindergarten with children, and I heard from Hannah Anschel, and as the Red Cross left, they would send the kids to Auschwitz to be exterminated. They had the next batch, and the Red Cross never caught on to that.
But Helena was been there for several years and died of, quote, natural causes, which means that she didn't actually get killed, but she probably didn't get the right medical attention and so forth. I think she's probably the closest of our relatives who died in the camp.
Didn't Lotta say that she took Madeline and she had a purse and that's all she had and she walked and went upstairs?
But before they got to the border, the underground said, we can't get you two together. And they took the baby over first, and for a day or two Lottie was worrying, will I ever see my baby again? But then they got her across and they were reunited. But you're right, I mean, many of these situations, going to Dachau, I'm sure that my father and Uncle Paul probably had the most one suitcase packed very hastily, if even that. Going to Gurs, 2 suitcases. This was always the situation. If I can mention another thing, when my Mutti, whom most of you know, our stepmother, died last December, we went through a huge pile of her correspondence. She had saved almost every letter she'd gotten since they arrived in New York. And one of them that she must have carried all the way from Gurs was a letter from some Polish Jews whom my parents had continued to support in Germany just before they were deported themselves. But then already the bank had essentially, I'm not sure whether my father was even working anymore by mid-1940.
No,
it wasn't. Anyway, they had continued to send food packages to some Polish Jews who already were interned. And this letter essentially said that this Polish group writing from their camp had found out that now my parents were interned as well, and thanking them for everything they'd been able to do, realizing you probably won't be able to do anything now. Then attached to it was a document from dated 1946 about from the agency in Germany. It was Time to Trace Jews, which had the same name of this Polish Jews on there, just saying we can no longer find any record of these people, so they were obviously exterminated.
By the way, for some of you who are musicians, you should know you come all from a musical family. And that we were reminiscing last night for the 25th wedding anniversary of Fred and Richard's parents. There was a concert organized by the Homburgers in our home, which consisted of the Haydn Toy Symphony being performed.
May I just inject one
Yes.
scientific remark? Is it not now established that the Toy Symphony by Haydn was not composed by Haydn but by Leopold Mozart?
At the time, we did not know that.
Is that really the case? But we rehearsed like anything, and my father was the lead violin. Richard played the cello. I played the trumpet. The cuckoo.
He was the cuckoo.
He was the caller.
I'm still a cuckoo.
I played the trumpet. Peter had a water whistle. Fred had the rattle. And somebody you don't know, Trudel was the conductor, and who have we got missing?
Played the triangle.
Oh, somebody played the Terramas, played the triangle, and Henry Master piano. That was the group that played the Haydn Toy Symphony for their parents.
Well, because it was also, in those days, no television and so on, you did actually try to play chamber music at home. Did you, to some extent?
Not really. We all had to learn the piano.
It should be pointed out, and I don't think Fred will mind that 2 members of this orchestra were not intrinsically musical. Is that putting it right?
That's an understatement.
But because of familial relationships, were strongly urged, if not ordered, to be part of this orchestra, and were then coached in whatever ways they could manage.
Well, I understand his mathematics even then were very good, and he counted till 7. And
Yeah,
then he went
Henry scored.
No mistakes either.
and then he counted to 7 again.
No, I had the number.
Oh, yeah,
wrote the numbers
you
for
wrote
me.
them down.
It was very easy.
Whereas Berta, who played the triangle, was within elbow reach of the conductor, so that the conductor on a downbeat could say, now is the time for the time.
The concert was not reviewed in the press.
The audience was 4.
Yes, 2 pairs, 2 sets of pairs.
When Walter
No,
said to
not
Fliese
quite.
and me this spring to Karlsruhe, I had never been, he also pointed out that you all really lived very close to Paul's family, just around the corner, which was like 2 minutes around the corner, and then grandma was opposite in the apartment. So they were very, very close living, and I had a very close relationship with them too.
And the 2 brothers always walked to the bank in the morning, walked back at lunchtime, had their siesta, walked back again.
Looking for
to the bank,
mushrooms or
yes. And on the way there were a lot of trees, and especially Uncle Paul Fred's father and Richard's father loved to look for mushrooms. And they used to go, the two of them together, and then as Uncle Paul would always walk sort of looking, for
the Homburger walk.
The Homburger walk. And then he would suddenly stop and he would go around the tree to inspect it. He had glasses and he would always look like this. Here's a peanut, right? And he put them on strong to look if that was a mushroom or not. And then he would pick them up and probably take them home. He was an expert. But that was the constitutional walk every day.
He was also
in that connection, it was his habit, because my mother didn't like it if she didn't know when dinner could be served in the evening. And that's why ever so often he had somebody call from the bank to say that he has just left, so we wouldn't come. Herr Dr. Homburger ist soeben weggegangen.
but in the morning and after lunch, it was so accurate you could set your clock by it. Because they had to leave from two different houses and meet at the others at Heidenplatz 1, which is about a 4-minute walk from each, but different directions. And they always met perfectly at that time. It was by the second. Going, not coming back, of course you couldn't do it.
Let me ask you this about the Rosh Hashanah, that's the Jewish New Year dinner. Were we all there at Grandma's office, or was it only our family? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
But I remember it was...
No, I think we usually went afterwards for some snacks.
No, we had a goose always. Goose and chestnuts.
In her house?
In her house, on Pinpecho.
But not on
Yom for food. I don't make
Goose that much.
But not on Yom Kippur.
By now, I guess most of you have gathered that our parents worked in a bank. This was a family bank that was founded by our great-grandfather. And Peter, I think, is about to pass around the picture of the building. And I know Peter and I did this, and perhaps Walter, we all learned our first typewriting from the Gertie Treifus, who was the telephone operator, and also had a typewriter next to the telephone. She also once in a while let us try to answer the telephone, and I remember I could never understand what anybody was saying, so I would pick up the phone and I would say, fight little Homburger, and somebody would say, no. Then I would have to turn it over to Gertie because I couldn't know what they were saying.
One interesting thing about these houses we lived in, Ruth and Nancy and I in 1986, and Walter, Emmy and Lisa this year, actually went to the door and had the gall to ring the bell and say, we lived here in the 30s, could we see what the house looks like again? And I want them to give their impression. My impression was, what a tiny place. We didn't own the house, we only rented it. But they had built a wall on the main floor, which sort of enclosed the hallway where I used to be sent because I was too naughty to eat with the parents in the dining room.
Yeah.
And
you never were naughty.
Because they said you were too naughty.
Yes, because they said I was too naughty. We were not allowed to go upstairs because the son of the people who live there now has his office upstairs and lives upstairs. We did go in the garden, and it was quite an experience to go back to a home where you used to live and you haven't been for 50 years. Now, what were your impressions?
Well, we also rang the bell. I didn't ring the bell, it was Emmy who said, okay, I'll ring. And we met this nice lady who invited us in, and she knew the name because Peter had been there the year before.
She knew the name, she was our age, she knew the name.
She knew the name. They had bought the house about 4 years ago. I don't know from whom. And I don't know if it was subdivided before or not, but on the second floor there was an office which they had rented out. The third floor their son lived, and we were allowed in, and they had raised the roof. We used to play up there always, but now it was raised. And I reacted completely differently from Peter. I thought the rooms were immense from what I remember.
Because they had much more.
And I think that my rationale was we had this old heavy furniture, these huge bookcases, and you name it. And they had modern furniture, and therefore for me the rooms looked much larger.
I can tell you as an outsider, they lived very elegantly.
And of course all the rooms that I remember, as the living room or the salon or whatever, the kitchen, had all been in the meantime rearranged.
The kitchen was renovated.
Yeah, the man who lives there is crippled and is in a
His
wheelchair.
wife has an artificial hand too.
Oh, and they made that into a bedroom downstairs. We had no bedrooms on the main floor.
Now the bank building you see survived the war, was not bombed out. It's become a historical building which cannot be torn down. And there's another bank in it now, but the inside is absolutely modernized.
It was, however, hit by 23 fire bombs without getting serious damage.
And tell me a story about going back.
I've seen, they took me up into the roof and showed me some of the patched up holes from the 23 fire
Was it
bombs.
when you went back as a soldier?
The second, yeah,
In the American army?
The second picture circulating is the same building in 1945 after the war, with me in front of the main entrance.
If I may, I'd like to, since you're talking about the fire at Homburger Bank, I want to tell you a little bit about the bookkeeping system. But I have to say, just so that without any prejudice, that at that time when I went there, I hadn't had any accounting yet, even not elementary. But I recall that the customer's ledger was kept by hand on a whole floor in a huge room on huge books, one account for each customer, all by hand, from vouchers that were presented to them and routed to them. And to make the bookkeeping doppelte Buchhaltung, there was another set of customers' accounts on the second floor that looked exactly like the one on the first floor, where exactly the same process was repeated. Again from vouchers was posted by hand to those ledgers upstairs, all the debit and credit entries. And then sometimes these two ledgers were reconciled to be sure that it's really right.
They need a computer.
My father did not allow any adding machines, any calculators, anything, because he had the theory that the human mind must be strained constantly in order to stay awake and alert.
Well,
and once you use these equipment items, then everything.
For him, he was way in his 80s, still finishing the New York puzzle, right?
Crossword?
Yeah, for the children, which Fred still does, and he sends in.
He's not in his 80s yet.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying he's doing it in his footsteps. And also creating new ones you do,
If you
right?
read the New York Sunday Times, once a year you find Fred's.
I mean, Walter can
twice
do about a quarter, a third.
No, once I'm doing good with one.
One a year.
You're now.
But there's only 6 triptychs a year, and that's the only ones I can do.
Fred, tell us when you got into the army and when you went to Germany. I didn't know that.
I got into the army like
Which
the
year?
rest of us.
Like an enemy alien does.
Well, I had to register on my 22nd birthday, incidentally. Same as anybody that was 21 or more. No, long before the war. In 1940 was registration was in 1940. You had to register if you were male and over 21. Then shortly thereafter, of course, I was declared an enemy alien, and in 1943 I was drafted as an enemy alien, which meant that in theory I could not own a camera, a gun, binoculars, and so on. We had to turn all that in.
But you could offer your
And
life.
of course, they never were returned. I didn't turn mine in, I gave it to someone who was a citizen. That was the easy way out. But some people did actually turn it in return for a receipt that was supposed to be redeemed for the cameras or whatever after the war. And of course it never was. They give you $5 per camera and $3 per binocular. And forget about it, they were all stolen in the meantime. Anyway, you were in the army then, with a gun and ammunition as an enemy alien, until you were on an overseas shipment list. There was a law at that time, which some of you
can tell me that it wasn't that way later on. You could not be sent overseas without first being naturalized. A conditional naturalization. So I was at a camp in Virginia. In my battalion there were 17, if I remember right. In the whole battalion there were 17 enlisted men, this is but private, that were taken by 2 non-coms to Washington D.C. to the court to be naturalized. One of the non-coms was a sergeant in my own company whom I had known for about 3 or 4 months. The other one was from a different company, and as a result, the way the training in Fort Belvoir went, I had never even met him, or probably never even seen him. Both of them swore that they had known me intimately for 5 years, all 17 of us. And I think in each case you probably knew one of them if it was from your company and you did not know the other one. There may have been some that had met both of them that morning, I don't know. There may have been some that happened to know. Anyway, you got naturalized, you signed it without having had a chance to even read it, and you were told this will be with your service record, and if you're discharged with an honorable discharge, there are 3 types of discharge. If you're discharged with an honorable discharge, you will get your naturalization papers. It's conditional. Even a neutral discharge, I don't know what it's called these days, would deprive you of the citizenship. It had to be honorable.
I was the one who was caught in that catch-22 because when the Korean War started in 1950, I tried to enlist, and I was told because you're not a citizen, you can't enlist. But we're going to draft you. And if you don't go when we draft you, you'll never become a citizen. So I said, okay, I was drafted, I went to Japan, I went to Korea, and my 5 years residence was up while I was in Korea. So our judge advocate's office wrote a letter to the federal court in Colorado to ask the procedure for the judge advocate to swear me in as a citizen. And the federal court in Denver wrote back a letter saying, serving in the United States forces in Japan and Korea does not qualify for residence in the United States. So I had to wait 18 months after I came back to make up the 18 months I was in Japan and Korea before I could be sworn in as a citizen in December of 1953. That law has now been changed. But at the very time that I was involved in it, even my service didn't count towards my residence because it was outside the United States.
So may I add to mine,
Yes.
since you said that? 2.5 years later, after participation in 5 campaigns in Europe,
When were you shipped over? That's what I don't know.
about spring of 44.
And where did you land?
In Europe.
Which part?
In Europe.
England. Which part? Because it's all, for me, such a reality.
I was in England for a number of months and retrained for various things.
Where you visited them, right? You visited
one of you, one of the 2 of you, I don't know it, both. We took you to Oxford, there was a parade or something.
Something like that.
And it was very.
Did you give me a
I was in a place that used to be an British officers training school and was used by Americans for some training and happened to be only about an hour or so from your school.
Yes.
And I hitchhiked. Of course, there was no private cars, no gasoline, and so on. Somehow I managed to get there. I think I walked the final hour. The final 3 miles or so, I think I walked. But I found you were in the library. And you said there's a bus into Oxford, right? I was surprised that I could have taken a bus, probably some. Anyway, now I got off the track.
So you were in England?
Then I was in England. I got across the channel. I left in June and I arrived in July. And it took us about 3 days to cross the channel. And we were crossing our finger, the longer the better. When we started, the lines were maybe 5 or 6 miles from where we were to land.
Scary.
By the time we finally got there, it was 20 or 25 miles
Where did
further
you land
away.
exactly?
Omaha Beach, wherever that was. I don't think I would recognize it, except that there are thousands of brand new gas masks in the bushes there somewhere. The first thing we threw away.
Well, too heavy or something, wasn't it?
Or too inconvenient to others. If there really had been gas welfare, we would have been in good health shape.
But then how long did it take from there until you got Karlsruhe?
No, but what happened? Let's
Well,
pretend
I went through the, I was transferred into, I was combat engineer first, was finally
What's a
transferred
combat
into
engineer?
bridges,
Building.
bridges mainly, building.
Exploding.
But mainly bridges.
Is that when you went to Switzerland? Is that a funny story?
Yes, that's another story. Anyway, when I finally got discharged on New Year's 45, 46, we came back because of the lack of ship. We had to wait a half a year in Europe for ships while they were having parades in front of New York Harbor celebrating the E-Day and the ships going there empty. We were sitting in France in the so-called cigarette camps because they were all named after cigarettes. Mine was Paradise camp or Lucky Strike camp. We were sitting there waiting for ships. We had enough points for discharge because after the J-Day you had to have so many points. And I think I had 67 points. By that time you could get discharged with 60 points. But there was no shipping available, so you couldn't get discharged. So eventually we got there, we landed in New Jersey between Christmas and New Year's. We got 3-day passes to spend New Year's at home. And we set our wedding date for about 10 days later. At that time.
Lauren, you were in England then?
No, New York. I'm back in New York now. New Jersey, New York. Can't kill more for these. Then on January 3rd, I finally went through the final discharge proceedings, and there came my packet of papers, honorable discharge, no naturalization paper. I said, I'm sorry, I want my naturalization paper. Well, it's not here. This went on for an hour or so. I said I refused to sign. I had to sign something on the discharge. I said I refused to sign. I was promised 2.5 years ago that I would get this paper as soon as I am discharged honorably, which is now, and I will not sign this unless I get a discharge, naturalization paper. So I was shoveled from the sergeant to the lieutenant and ended up with a major, a legal guy, who told me that my service record shows that I'm naturalized, but it has been lost, and I just have to work through the. If you give me a certificate saying that I was in fact naturalized, that my service record shows that 2.5 years ago, I'll be satisfied. And he said, I can't do that because there is a rule that says you may not give a serviceman, I don't know whether it's for officers too, but it certainly, I was a corporal at the time, you cannot give a serviceman a extract from his service record. I said, all right, sir, and I have another suggestion. Here at Fort Dix, I see there is a naturalization service. I'm perfectly willing to be naturalized right here now. And he says, no, this can't be done because there is a law that says you cannot be naturalized more than once. And I said, yes, but I can't prove that I have been naturalized. He said, yes, you can, but I see it here on your service record.
Whoops.
So in the end, he said, well, it is your privilege to refuse to sign this for this reason. But I guarantee you that if you insist on that, you will be here for several weeks, and I will personally see to it that they will not be very pleasant. And he just smiled at me, and he turned the paper around and held the pen in front of me.
You made next.
I bluffed, and he called my bluff. I mean, I had my wedding set for the next week. No way was I going to stay in camp. But it did, in fact, take me almost a year until I finally got a duplicate certificate. I mean, it was worthwhile fighting for if I could have gotten something out of the guy, but I couldn't.
I was wondering whether any of the younger people have some questions now that we've chatted away for over an hour.
They're probably all asleep by now.
I don't think so.
Okay,
I think so. You say something.
I always wondered how religious you were when you were young. I mean, were you really religious, or was it just something like in our family, just, you know?
You mean in Germany?
Yeah.
Not really. We went to services on the high holidays. Were taken there.
Were you
Contributed liberally with financial.
Yeah. I can tell you how religious my father was. He took his Judaism very seriously. He himself, and also demanded of his children to go to the synagogue as follows. On the first day of Rosh Hashanah, on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, and on Yom Kippur with fasting. However, not to stay at a synagogue all day while services were going on continuously. He had a particular point in the prayer book, that was the luncheon break, where he insisted year after year at this point he would leave the synagogue, and he had a certain point at which he would return. On very rare occasions, he went on Pesach, that's Easter, but that was a great exception. If somebody occasionally wanted to go a second day of Pesach, he considered that a severe relapse into orthodoxy. Was not permitted.
And I think our father just adjusted to your father.
He adjusted.
Except for one thing which I remember very distinctly. We as kids had to fast on Yom Kippur. And as the youngest, I was always asked, what would you like as your first meal after sundown on Yom Kippur? Ham and potato salad. So you can see we did not have a kosher kitchen.
But I think was the only one that sang in the synagogue choir for
I did.
Oh, I
you did too.
didn't know that.
Well, to answer your question, not very. Not very.
It had its ups and downs.
And so did Peter.
Yes, of
Let me
course.
say
Who
this
asked?
about our grandfather, Fritz. He was for many years the conductor of the synagogue choir.
That's where our musicality
Who was?
comes from.
Oh yes,
Grandfather
our
Fritz.
Fritz and Sophie were very musical people. And I talked to Sophie about lots about music. She had great appreciation. Even for Richard Wagner. He said he was a terrible anti-Semite, but he had a lot of music to give.
Does that answer your question?
Was everyone bar mitzvah? We're all boys.
Huh?
All 5 boys bar mitzvah.
Pardon me?
You were bar mitzvah.
Well,
Yes, I was.
not us two.
You two were bar mitzvah?
Yes, of course.
Richard was bar mitzvah?
Well,
You were bar mitzvah?
I'm bar mitzvah, yeah.
And Walter.
Yes.
Well, there
But you
is, but
see,
not.
by the time
Oh, you were gone.
13,
You were already
were-
in England.
And
What have to bar mitzvah?
another answer to your question, when we arrived in England, Paul Trefus, who was really a magnificent man and spent a great deal of his resources and energies on us over the years, sent us to boarding school since he was a bachelor. And most of the boarding schools in England are Episcopalian. In fact, they are built, even the prep schools, which are up to the 8th grade, are built with their private chapels and all that. And essentially he said, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. If it doesn't upset you too much, and after we were 10 and 12, just go to the services. And so we went to the services not really knowing what was going on, and we were still learning English. And that story I've told so often, Arlene's getting tired of it, was that one of the first English words that I learned in England was bechart. Bechart. Our Father bechart. Because, you know, I listened to this day after day, and I'd start picking out words. I'd pick out the hour and the Father. These were words which I was familiar with, and heaven I was familiar with. But which art, you know, the art is archaic anyway. And so, but that was about how we got into an exposure, let's say, our first exposure to the Christian religion.
Fred, we would like to hear that funny story in Switzerland.
You mean when I came back?
I don't
you went to
know,
vacation.
but there are two of you there too.
Okay. After the E-Day had passed and VJ Day was still ahead of us, and in fact we were thinking we would all be shipped to Japan. which fortunately due to the atomic bomb was not necessary. But at that time all accumulated furloughs were to be used up. And you could, in each unit, so many could go to England, so many could go to Switzerland. 2 of them could go to Switzerland. I forget just exactly how I did it, but I had a particularly long backlog of furloughs because I hadn't had any in 2.5 years, because there were others in the same position. So I did get a week in Switzerland permitted. I could get one of the 2 that were permitted for my unit, whether that was company or battalion or larger, I don't remember. Anyway, as a result of that, this is 45 I'm talking about, summer 45 I think. We were shipped to, I think it was Mühlhaus in the Alsace, where there was loot barracks and women putting all the badges you were entitled to on all your shirts and uniforms and so on. And you got a brand new style called Eisenhower jacket. And all the patches were put on it that over the years you never had a chance to get and so on. And you were really made out to look like a fashion plate soldier there.
Hero.
Yeah. And then you had to go by a desk where you could choose between 3 guided tours for a week that you could do in Switzerland, or if you had a close relative in Switzerland, then you could go on your own, and instead you would get a certain amount of cash that you could change from your invasion money that you had, instead of the guided tour. So I promoted Ludwig Homburger, who lived in St. Gallen, to uncle. Fortunately, since I know the family tree, he is actually a cousin about 3 times bigger. And the sergeant on that desk then asked me his address, and fortunately I remembered that. Wiener Bergstraße 58, I remembered that. And he turned around and he had the phone books of all of Switzerland behind him, pulled out the St. Gallen phone book, looked up his name, the address checked, and he believed me that was my uncle. And I got my pass to be in Switzerland on the loose with so much cash for a week. I went to Zurich, and I went to visit some people I knew there, and I took the trolley, and the trolley has a standing room at each end. Platform at each end, open platform or whatever. And I stood there, and I looked out the window. I hadn't been in Zurich in 6 years, and the whole war had gone in between. I looked around, and I suddenly hear these people behind me, several men behind me, discussing me. I was the first American soldier they had seen. And they looked at my patch, which was looked like a hatchet. It was really called the Pathfinder Division, and it was a tree and a hatchet. And they thought it was a butcher, cleaver, or whatever. And they kept on talking about it station to station, and I took it all in since I understand Swiss German dialect fluently. And I lived in Zurich for 4 years and in St. Gallen for 1, and I could myself speak it reasonably well. And then finally they started egging one of them on. He said, "You speak English, why don't you ask him what it stands for and all kinds of other things about my uniform?" And he says, no, it's not good enough. And in the meantime, I in my head, I prepared my answer. Finally, after about 4 stops, the guy finally got up enough courage and in horrible English said, "Excuse me, sir, but we would want that." And I let him finish his sentence, and then I rattled off my very best Swiss German dialect and gave him all his answers.
I hope you then all went for a beer or something.
No, we didn't. I then explained that I had studied in Zurich.
To emigrate with his family started so late, while mine started so much earlier in Berlin. My father was an Aryan, my mother Jewish. I was not raised in the Jewish faith. My father worked at Ulstein, I don't know whether any of you know, the largest publishing company. And this was what they call in Germany being alisiert as early as possible. And the Jews were practically thrown out on the street. Since my father was not Jewish, he could stay. But very soon afterwards, he was told that if he could not stay and hold this job unless he divorced my mother. He discussed it with my mother. He really didn't want to go on ahead, but it was my mother who urged him and said, so what? Let's get a divorce and you stay here and nobody else needs to know. Things didn't work out that way. He was fired later on anyway. And he had known us as a family. That was his way of life. He could not cut this off from one day to the next. Every evening in darkness, he would come to visit and be with us, and I had to run down the stairs and see that nobody was on the stairs. I was practically a child way back then. And that was long before the Homburgers still made a trip to Italy and had a relatively good time. My father eventually had to find another job in another city or he would have gotten killed for the simple reason the Nuremberger laws came out in 1935. And from that time on, since they had been divorced shortly before, they could not see each other anymore. My father eventually came back to Berlin, had another job, and then was drafted into the army. He, unfortunately, because he was an officer during World War I, and he was only an officer because he was in a school in the gymnasium, what do they call it, the French gymnasium in Berlin. It is like if you are in college here in the United States, if you're drafted, you usually go right on as an officer. And he was drafted very late during World War II and saw very little of the war as an officer. But the Germans kept all the records, and that's why he was drafted at the age of 44, I believe. And in fact, they were still drafting 18 and 20-year-old kids. He was then sent to to training, which they never did again, and he became a pioneer. And a pioneer was supposed to be behind the front and rebuild bridges, and that was his job, and that's why he survived World War II. My mother, because I was not raised in the Jewish faith, was saved in the beginning from being sent to a concentration camp. Once she was picked up in our house, and then a group of, I should say that all Jewish families were picked up, and then they started to go after the family people who were part of a mixed marriage. They either had an Aryan husband or an Aryan wife, and the Aryans went in the evening in the streets and shouted, "We want our wives, our husbands back." That was the only rebellion that ever occurred in Berlin. And the Gestapo men in charge got scared and let them all go home again. Therefore, my mother could stay home for another half a year or so. I cannot remember the exact time. Something like this did never ever happen again in Berlin. She was picked up a second time around. Actually, she was not picked up. This is how it was. She had also been forced to work, and she had to work on clothing, refinishing clothing for children. She had no choice in the matter. Once a week she was going to pick up a bundle in another part of Berlin, and she had to refinish it at home. She was not very good in sewing. Sometimes she would cut a buttonhole in too far, and then since I knew a little bit about sewing, I repaired it for her, and so she survived. One evening, it was dark. We had blackout. Some friends recognized us on the street, or mother, and said, "I have heard that they're going to go after you tomorrow. For God's sakes, don't go to work." His name was Hadelet, and he was the uncle of the newscaster Hadelet here in the United States. I don't know, have you ever heard of him? These were some wonderful friends that we had. And so the next morning, Mother said, "I cannot simply stay at home. I have to get rid of my bundle of clothing. And the next morning, I said, get the streetcar very early. You will never get picked up before 8 o'clock. The place where she worked opened at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. I think at 6. She was there at 6 o'clock, raced in, delivered her work, picked up the new work, raced out, and did not get arrested. By 10 o'clock, the Gestapo was there and picked everybody up. Now our friends called us and said, we have an apartment for you. These people are out of town and you can live in there. But for God's sakes, don't go home because the Gestapo is going to come after your house. And there we lived for about a week. And Mother was terribly upset. She said, this is 4 or 5 stories high. I don't mind jumping out of the window. I just cannot go underground. You had to have nerves of steel. You had to lie. You had to say you aren't Jewish. You lost your house. The bombs destroyed your house, and you lost your identification papers. You had to go to all authorities. And she said, I couldn't do this. I couldn't do it either. After a week, she said, well, I go back to work. I didn't go to work either. And she said, if something happens, please call me. I wasn't in work for 2 hours when a man came to pick me up and said, do you want your mother? We want to know where your mother is. If you don't, said, I don't know. If you don't know where your mother is, then you will go with us. And so I went to her phone, I left it up to my mother, and she said, oh, I'm so glad you called, I'll be right there. And it was about a half an hour later on, and she showed up. And the man who came and picked us up was a Jew. And that's how they did it. They told these Jews, you go on and pick up so-and-so and so-and-so. And if you find these people and bring them here, you can wait a transport and you are alive for a week longer. But the first time she was picked up by 2 men with an SS uniform, and let me tell you, that is terribly scary. And so if given a choice, I'd rather be picked up the other way. So Mother went with him. I knew where she was. I could visit with her. It was very late. It was in February of 1944. She told me all the things she wanted in suitcases because she didn't have anything on her. Our friends couldn't understand it that we did this. They felt we have helped you so far. You could have lived illegally or were underground, and I'm sure we wouldn't have made it. Mother then was in Berlin for 3 days, and then she was transported. I saw her twice. And the people who accompanied them came back and getting ready for the next transport and told me that this was the most pleasant transport they ever have seen because they could sit in a train. It was a passenger train, and it wasn't very full, and they all had a place to sit. But then I was also told I have to start right away to send food packages. She would go to Theresienstadt. I had to send food packages and cards. I was allowed to send 2 pounds. 2 pounds is a little bit more in German weight than an American weight to the concentration camp. And so for the rest, while she was staying there, I sent 2 pounds of food parcels to her and cards. Very much towards the end, she had to go to the Gestapo in Theresienstadt. And she was asked, do you have children living in Germany? She said, yes. I have a daughter. Do you ever hear from her? Yes. And she showed all my cards and the receipts that she received, packages. And I said, well, here she writes she was on vacation. She seems to have a wonderful time. Well, I didn't want to worry her, so she said, well, she has to work. She just, very hard. She just doesn't want me to worry. Those people who had heard from their children and who had outside contacts, cards and packages were put on one list right in front of the Gestapo, those who didn't on the other. I said, did you know what it was? She said at the time I didn't, but it looked better to be on the list where all the people who had mail from their children would be. I would like to say that since she came so late, and at that time the concentration camp was almost emptied by people were not murdered there, they were sent on transport to Auschwitz. And then when these people, when they got to Auschwitz, they never got to see Auschwitz, they go straight through the gas chambers. Well, this apparently helped her save her life. Not all people who had children who wrote to them survived, maybe 90%. And although of those who did not have any contact with anyone out of the concentration camp, roughly 90% were sent to concentration camps and got killed. It is a sad story. Mother told me that most of the people who were sent to Auschwitz and who had children living in Germany never heard from them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she survived. She came back to Berlin and we emigrated to the United States. This was
After the Russians took over Berlin.
After the Russians took over Theresienstadt as well as Berlin.
How was that?
Well, I was very fortunate. I think there was a rule of thumb. If the Russians were in the majority, it was terrible. Most people didn't even survive it. But by the time the Russians came to Berlin, there were still 2 million people in Berlin. The Russian army had to spread itself out. It became thinner and thinner. And although for about 24 hours it was pretty terrible, where I was, our street was fun for 24 hours and then we were overrun the next day. But 3 days later, we were told the Americans are going to come and the Russians left. Had I gone to the outskirts of Berlin, I have some friends. They were heavily occupied and it would have been a lot worse. It would have been, under the circumstances, it was much better for me to stay in Berlin. And so I relatively survived it well.
How old were you then?
I was 18, was I 18? About 18, 20.
Because I was 10 and 11 when we got the Russian occupation.
You had heavy occupation or not?
Totally.
Yeah, that was terrible. But
it was totally anarchy and they robbed and raped.
This was in Vienna, right?
In Vienna, yeah. I mean, my story as a non-Jew during the war is also a point of view that might interest some people. What the bombings were like, what the, the lack of food, the fear for one's life and the life of the other people. We were in Bulgaria, my parents had been from Vienna and emigrated in 1926. And Sofia was, I think, aligned with Germany. I never understood this and I don't think my mother knows it. But they must have been, because when the Russians were coming close, all the Germans who had been tolerant, or people of German or Austrian descent who had been tolerant in Bulgaria, were told they would end up in Siberia, and they did. They all did end up until they were only liberated in 1956.
Bulgaria was on the German side in both
right.
wars.
That's right.
One of only 3 allies in the first one.
And but we, when everything was bombed out in Bulgaria, I was sent out to Vienna, and then I never knew whether my parents were alive or dead for a year. And they came on the last transport, being shot with the what you call Tiefflieger.
Dive bombers.
The dive bombers. My mother had terrible stories to tell. In the compartment next to her mother with a child in her arms, the mother dead, the child still alive. People crawling under the railway track. One dead, the next one still alive, whatever. And then in Vienna, it was utter chaos, 44, 45, it was burning bombings, seeing people that you knew being picked out of rubble piece by piece.
How old were you?
I was 10. And then the Russians came. I saw them come in the fields. We were in the Simmering, which has already starting towards the airport, and there were fields, And we went when after 14 days of continuous bombing, and they had the German defense still had on the roof those tom-toms,
Anti-aircraft guns?
Yeah, and also you could see the Russians' fur heads in between the fields, popping up as they were coming closer and closer. And my mother made me look, tried to make me look as I had malaria or something. Not malaria, dysentery. Because apparently they did. They came and always asked for women to volunteer for potato peeling. And apparently those women were raped, unmercifully. And they would go after 85-year-old women and 10-year-old kids. And, many women also committed suicide, tried to escape them, jumping out of windows and things like that. So this is another part, but it doesn't compare, and I always feel it was a reality of a war, which just people should know what war is like. But
Thank you.
Ola? How early in the war did they know about the extermination camps? Did people know about that very early? You asked the right person.
Let me tell you a story. I was once interviewed, and I was glad I could explain that. This tape is now in Israel somewhere under my maiden name, Ola Sinel. I look Jewish, and it started very early that people on the street would say, "Oh, you dirty Jew." I don't think that anybody ever hit me, but they spat at me, and the best thing for me was always to move and to run. And this went on until about 1943 or 1944. And at that point, nobody believed anymore that I was a Jew. I was the same person. I looked as Jewish as I did in 1933 or 35, because they knew that all the Jews are dead. I felt much safer in the streets in 1933, 34 than I did in 1943 and 44 than I did in 35, 36, 37, 38, and so on.
But did you know about the gas chambers? At what point did you know on the inside about the gas chambers?
We knew some friends who lived underground, and from one of them I learned very early that there were concentration camps, and not just they were gas chambers, and she told me just exactly what happened. She said, "I heard it from an SS-man, and I don't care whether you believe it or not, but I think it is my duty to tell you that." Now the problem is I do not exactly know the year anymore, but it was very, very early.
But I remember when I learned, within the American Army, it was after the E-Day.
Oh, really?
And the first extermination camps operated in January 42.
42,
so this
42, 44, I think in 42.
And I learned about it early or middle of 45.
And we had to
more than 3 years later.
We had to develop a sense of what we could believe and what we could not believe. And my sense throughout the time.
I thought he did. That's why he was hiding out there.
Oh yeah, one more thing I want to tell you. It got a little bit better, as I said, after 3 or 4 days. We lived in a very unusual house. We had the front stairs and we had the back stairs. And we had a balcony to the next building, which was still part of our complex. And there they had front stairs and back stairs. The roof was empty because of the bombs. You were not allowed to have anything in the attic. And on the attic, you can run back and forth and had the choice of going down 4, 5 stairs. And while we still had rather heavy occupation among the Russians, we opened all the apartments and all the doors. And some Russians tried to catch some girls, and we all knew where to run. Once a guy had locked me, and went in my room, looked at me, and took a deep breath. It was Russian, and I jumped out the window onto a balcony, went through the next door neighbor, went through his apartment up and down. I lost him immediately, and that was the closest I ever came.
Oh.
Close enough.
Under the Russian occupation, we had probably a little bit of an inkling what it must have been like for you people, this deprivation of any rights that you had. I mean, you had no rights, nobody to turn to, no authority to protect you, because that was the first few months under Russian occupation. They just came, and if they were drunk and you were walking the street, they shot you down like a dog. Or they came in the houses and shot you down, and that gives us some inkling. But I don't think that you can imagine what it is like not to have any rights or nowhere to turn to. And this is, to me, the most horrible thing. What I think your parents and the, the people of Jewish descent, what was done to them. The deprivation of their right to be a human being.
I really started to say something else. As I said, we were not heavily occupied for a long period of time. We did have to bury all the dead, and I've never seen so many dead people in my life. And some of them were dead already for several days, but I was not involved with that. The streets needed to be cleaned, and then we went into apartments or wherever we lived, if they were still standing. And that was it. We got, the Russians provided some bread for us, which nearly killed you. We all had dysentery. I think my weight went down to 70 pounds or so. We had absolutely no food. What we didn't hoard before, we didn't have, we couldn't eat. And we didn't know anything. And it wasn't until the end of the month that we saw for the first time on the walls and on the paper, on trees that survived and ruins, that the war was over on when?
About the 8th of May?
8th of May. We did not know this until the 23rd of May. We had no gas, no electricity, and hardly any water. You can't survive without water, but you can survive with the others. When you have no electricity in all of Berlin, it isn't that you don't have a newspaper. You can't even have a radio you can't have a radio working because it needs electricity in order to. So there was nothing. Anyhow.
Well.
And then I come to this country and everybody said, where were you when the war was over? My answer was, I didn't know it.
Lisa has the floor.
I had the privilege, if one could say it was a privilege, to visit one of the camps in Buchenwald in the east.
That was
East Germany.
Concentration camp, not an extermination camp.
And that was pretty moving for me.
That was recently when you were in Europe.
And Arlene and I went to Gürs about 4 years ago and found that the camp itself has long since disappeared, but the cemetery is still there. The cemetery contains graves of about 100 Spanish refugees who had been there before, and of the approximately 900 or 1,000 Germans that died there, including Rolf Maas, the husband of the Maas family we've been talking about. I think it's 2 or 3 people with the last name of Homburger, and quite a few others of our very distant relatives. There's a caretaker house in the front in case any of you should ever travel there and want to see it. And that caretaker has a photograph album that does show photos of the Camp Gürs as it was when it was actually operating.
Any more questions? And there's a question.
I've just been listening.
But the Gürs, because we talked so much about it, I think is the one incident in the whole war and the episode where the outside world could have saved 9,000 lives and failed to move a finger. In a so-called neutral country, Vichy France was theoretically neutral. There were 9,000 people threatened with extermination, and the whole world stood by quietly, doing absolutely nothing.
And there were
other Jews in other camps in the Pyrenees in the same situation.
This was the biggest one, I think, wasn't it?
I don't know.
One thing we're going to do, most of you may have heard about this woman in Israel who is writing a book about the Homburger family.
Quite a few of you met her.
Quite a few of you have met her.
Esther
Ramon. We've been taping all afternoon, and if the tape machine works, what we're going to do, we're going to make a copy of the combination of all the tapes and the video too, and send it to her, so that she can incorporate it in the history that she is writing of the family. What she'll do with it, that's up to her. And if any of you are interested in a copy, let me know and we'll do it. There is a card someplace for everyone to sign. We're going to send her a card.
We can do that tonight.
Yeah, but so many are leaving.
Some people are leaving.
11 people will be gone before we meet again this evening.
Tonight at 7 at
Also, not only to Esther, but also to Tanya.
Yeah. So those are the question.
Before you break up and shut the tape off and everything, just like to say that it's been really interesting for me, and I think for all the younger kids to hear this. And we really appreciate everything you went through in your lives to get us on.
Thanks a lot.
And do you just want to tell us about going to the village of Homburg?
Yes, please.
That's right.
I wish I brought the photos, I forgot, so in 3 years we'll be able to see them. This picture on the bottle is about all that's there. It's not a very big village. It consists of a little schloss on top of a hill. It's right on the River Main, about 10 miles out of Würzburg. And it's a grape growing community. They have vineyards all up and down the hills. They've got some very old houses that I'm sure have been there for a number of years, a couple hundred years. And then they've got the new houses up on the hill as well. But it's an interesting little town. There's one little grocery store. There is a very large collective building that's built into the mountain right across from the Schloss, which serves as their wine cellar. And this is where I bought these 2 bottles of wine. You can go in and they've got a little sitting area with the bar, and they've got about 15, 20 different types of Homburger wine from the region. And if you speak German, which I didn't, you would get a lot more out of it. But I managed to get a few tastes of the wine and select a couple that I wanted to buy. And it was all very friendly. They're very friendly people.
Did you tell them that you're a Homburger?
No, I did not. I couldn't even do that. So.
But
probably should have
what
showed
is
my
the story
passport.
of the village of... I don't know the story of the village of Homburg.
There's no further story except that our ancestor Löw, who was invited to become a citizen of Karlsruhe and given a Schutzbrief, a letter of protection, was then assumed the name Homburger since he had just arrived from Homburg.
From the village of Homburg.
From this village.
And was it a count? Because usually a village was called according to a count. I mean, in Austria, you know, the other people who were not of the count's family, they were the, let's say, Wolfgang from the village of Homburg, because that was...
I don't know where the word Homburg came from.
Burg, and the Burg of course means
But Burg is a
castle or fortified fort. I don't know.
And I missed
there are 2 or 3 other Homburgs, and of course there were handfuls and so on.
The castle is now used as their central town meeting hall, and it's set up for parties and dances and things. And I had missed the Vine Fest by about a week, I found out.
Perhaps we should
On the road
have a
on the way in.
reunion in that
Schloss.
For those
It's actually on the map too.
For those of you who haven't heard, the next reunion will be either 2 or 3 years from now in California, planned by the California Homburgers.
And the volunteers there are children.
The volunteers, there were none.
I volunteered,
Yes.
and you volunteered that.
We have volunteers.
Yeah,
The mind can only absorb what the seat can stand.
What year was that?
I would read it.
Homburger, hamburger. I'll just put it in an envelope.
You're alright.
I hope the
thing is huge.
Too big. And I'm going to take 3 or 4 different pictures. Go ahead and play with it over at your house. Get a better picture.
44 inches high.
But I'll be there as soon as
Go down by Daddy now.
Can I go?
Just a second.
Yes, I did.
What are you gonna do? Okay, come over here and knock it up this way.
Wait. You have to try and get in that hole.
Ashley, get off the carpet now so that Uncle Steve can hit. Get off, quick, get off.
Has Heidi gone?
Heidi, did you get your ball yet?
She's right there.
Go ahead, Heidi. Great shot.
Hey, here, Heidi. Good, right there. What's up? Oh, good shot. Go on.
You hit it halfway there, and I'm impressed.
And look how far I got it.
Yeah, she's going to play the back 9.
Yeah,
go.
Okay.
She lefty.
I'm gonna leave if you don't do it. Come on, show me what you do. It's all right. Little girls are just scared to death.
What?
Little girls are acting scared to death.
You're kidding. That's the first.
Oh, I'll believe.
John.